Good morning, bright and early from Chiang Mai, Thailand. I actually have already had a call this morning at 7 a.m. here my time, so I'm already awake, no problem. I've already had my first cup of tea, so it's really, really wonderful to be here and be chatting with you. I always get excited for my Friday calls to be live on here and see who jumps on, and just all week. And actually even the call that I had this morning and having this topic percolate. So today we're going to be talking about, first and foremost, really talking about comparison. It's so easy to get trapped in the comparison loop and essentially, see other people's, especially here on Facebook, right? See other people's outsides and be either, comparing your insides to their outsides, or just essentially making it it looks so easy for them, right? It's so easy to kind of think that somebody's got it all figured out, or that it's so easy for them, or, oh yeah, it's easy for them to say because XYZ, right? So we don't always know the full story of what's going on behind someone's business and certainly with someone's life, because social media, there's no way that it can really convey all of it. And this is why we need important friends and deep, more kind of like deep dive support in our lives, right? So we all know that comparison is not good for us, but I think what often happens, and what I see happen with some of my clients, is when they're seeing that somebody is doing something really similar to them, and it can almost feel like this affront, but don't they know that I'm doing this and that I had this idea first? And we really want to get into sort of this land grabbing where we had the idea first, or that whatever it may be, that we're threatened by them doing something similar, or just threatened by them doing what seems to be, from your perception, doing great. That some part of that, and this is actually a really important piece to be aware of, is that when you see someone doing great out there, or at least if it looks like they're doing great, and it triggers something in you, that's something to really look for, is noticing gosh, I'm seeing that this person is launching this whole thing and it looks like it's going so smooth, and just watching what that triggers in you is actually a really powerful process for you, because when you can see, you start what I call being a curious anthropologist of the little things that trigger you, or that are creating some kind of a feeling in your body. And as you get more body-centered and embodied in this, you can actually just even ask your own body, and feel into the sensations in your body of wow, when I saw that video come out, or that launch that come out, or I'm seeing this person do so much, it's bringing up these feelings of either jealousy or judgment or whatever that might be. And the reason why you can check into that and get curious about it is you can start to see what might it be revealing, or kind of shining a spotlight on in yourself, that you're wanting more of, that you're wanting to experience more of in your business, in your life. Even if it's just out of wow, she makes marketing look so easy, right? Or that you see someone making money. It might actually be the reverse. It might be negative, where you see somebody that's making a lot of money and closing all these deals, and that there's part of you that wants to be judgmental. And you want to start saying oh, it's, they're so greedy, or I can't believe that she's just trying to take everyone for all their money, whatever. And it's you want to start justifying. This is where this trigger is hit on something so deep within you that you want to start justifying your own, essentially, lack of action, or lack of doing whatever this is kind of highlighting for you, that there's something in you. Not to say that there's not some people that genuinely may not be, but what it is actually, it's highlighting a value. And so, for example, in that regard, it could be that it's integrity that's getting highlighted for you. And so if you hold a lot of integrity in your business, and you see somebody that's maybe not running and operating with the same amount of integrity, that might trigger you. And so this is all about developing the witness as well. So one way you can do this is by standing back, getting curious about what's happening within yourself, and then recognizing, like, so igniting the witness is basically saying that this isn't happening to you, that she's not, probably through your perception exactly what she or he, exactly what you're coming to a conclusion about, but instead noticing and getting curious with your own reactions in a way to say, I wonder what this is highlighting for me, that, what value is this challenging for me, that is so important to me that I'm wanting to get really mad and really self-justified about this. And so you can kind of help create a little bit of just that distance from it to be able to really healthily ignite the witness, so that you're not driven by it, so that you're not then reacting and in reactive mode. So those are some tips for you as you're finding some comparison. Also, I highly recommend you going back and watching my video that I recorded, was it last week? All about, or maybe week before actually, because last week we were on the holiday, all about abundance versus scarcity, because a lot of times comparison comes up because, again, that land grabbing thing, right? Comparison often comes up because we're in a scarcity mindset. We are somehow believing that there's only just enough room for one person, which could not be farther from the truth, right? And I constantly am hearing people ask me if I know a certain speaker or author that I've never even heard of. And so it always really is actually, and vice versa, that I'll talk to people who haven't even heard of Brené Brown, for example. And I'm like, she's huge in my world and I love her and adore her. And there's some people that still have not even heard of her. So it's a good reminder that there's plenty of room, and the world needs all of your gifts, even if you're doing kind of something similar. And so this is where it helps us step into this idea of competition. And that actually in business, competition is a very good thing. And it can be really, again, back to this word like threatening, right? It can be so threatening when there's competition, because all of a sudden then it's kind of like being in a race where all of a sudden you've got some people that are trying to get to the finish line. However, while yes, there technically might be a number one or what have you, like financially or whatever measurement you actually want to go for, what's so important is to come back into your own goals, your own outcome. What often happens is we actually will either get threatened or charged by competition, and sometimes we can actually start running a race that we don't even want to run, right? We start actually trying to win at something that isn't even in alignment for where we're wanting to go. And this often comes out of then, so say you see the competition is doing so well, doing this and this and this, and you're like, oh my God, I need to be doing that in order to do well. But that's not true. In fact, the whole premise of business and innovation and certainly your unique light and your unique magic is remembering that your way of doing things, and yes, you can grab some tips and you can grab some insights and you can kind of model off of what has worked, but that you staying in alignment with what is true for you and what's right for you is so important. And so to just really always be checking in that you're not, essentially starting to be on someone else's path and do someone else's thing just because you've seen them do it. Now, I'm going to give you a few other examples of competition and where it's really, really helpful. So number one, I'm going to tell you a quick story, which is that I'll never forget when I met this. This is like when I first moved to Hong Kong a couple years ago. And I got to meet this brewery. This is actually back when I was drinking. And I got to meet this brewer of the Young Master Ales, which out of Hong Kong is like this really awesome like craft brew company. And they had this like delicious beer that I absolutely loved. And it was so fun to meet him and chat with him. And in our first, he was like, so in Hong Kong, there's very few, or was anyway, there's definitely a lot more now, very few craft beers. It's because it's British colonized, there's like this huge, is it Carlsberg that's like really big, and like, and just in Hong Kong in general, I think it's so expensive that it ends up getting taken over by kind of these like mainstream brands. So him being a craft beer person, and even just like Hong Kong, certainly locals, that taste and that awareness and of the quality and the reasoning and the education and everything behind craft beer. I'll never forget that he said that I think I had posed something about how, it was so great that, he was doing craft beers or something like that because it was so rare, and that there was not many other people doing it. And he corrected me and was like, actually, I want more people to do it. I want more people he wanted more competitors. And he was smart because he knew that with more people getting in the craft beer space, that there would be more education out there. There would be more people preaching like the gospel of craft beer. And so whatever way that then reached more of the masses, it gave him even more of an opportunity, his brand, the Young Master Ales brand, the opportunity for more people to step into that bar and go, oh, I've heard of craft beer. And I've heard of this brand, even maybe they had heard, and because there would be this rise of knowledge and information. We're in a time right now, and certainly with the entrepreneurs that I work with, which are very conscious entrepreneurs, very heart-centered entrepreneurs, where this wasn't the case even, 5 years ago, and when I started even like 10, 15 years ago, where the way that it is now in terms of being a conscious entrepreneur, that we've like hit this tipping point, which is so fascinating. Even being a coach, now all of a sudden, years ago, like they didn't know really too much about a coach. Now it's like freaking front page magazines are like, hire a coach this year. And it's totally reached this tipping point where now it's in the common vernacular about what that is. So in one perspective, in one, small-minded or scarcity perspective, you could be thinking like, oh no, everyone's a coach and there's no space and there's no room. Or you could be like, I'm so stoked that the world knows the power of coaching now, and that I am going to be able to then share my message so much more because I'm not going to have to explain what the heck a coach is. Like, you already know. Cool. We've already taken care of that. And now we can actually automatically dive a little bit deeper about what support are you needing, or what excites you about the idea of receiving a coach. And, with any of the rise of like an industry or this kind of like new innovative things, then there's always these new branches, new awarenesses that start coming off of it and deepening, and so that actually again also gives you a great advantage where your unique aspect of it and thread of it. And believe you me, I have seen so many times where there's like a coach somewhere in some other town on the other side of the world, because I'm in Asia now, where they're doing something really similar. And I always kind of like marvel at how cool it is that the way that I think about it is like, how cool is it that, spirit or the universe, whatever you want to say, that it has kind of sprinkled people with this beautiful skill set at different parts of the world to be able to reach some more people and reach some different people. And, ultimately that's kind of the beauty of a beautiful lens to look through when it comes to comparison and competition, is recognizing that, what's your why for this? And I have one of my clients who just has this incredible purpose for supporting women in the world. And she saw someone doing something just like hers, and it just like brought up all this stuff for her. And it was like, but if you actually look at the outcome that you're wanting and all the women's lives that you're going to touch, that she wants to impact, that the fact that there's someone else out there doing that work and is also impacting so many lives, like win. And that eventually you guys are going to do different things, you know. And I always am reminding my clients as well that they might see somebody out there that like has this perfectly packaged business. But if I know anything from all the entrepreneurs that I support, there's a lot of people that will have a perfectly packaged business. They'll be making money doing something but they'll be in their zone of excellence. And so what happens is that you can compare, again, you know, compare somebody's outsides and kind of feel like they're, you know, being so successful or they're doing so great, but you don't really know what's going on. You don't know if they're actually not making money, or if they're playing small and therefore they're not closing deals, or if it's really just not even in alignment with them anymore. So they're actually already starting to energetically distance themselves from the business and start going to something that is more in alignment, which means that all those people that are currently being served or have been being served may be an open channel, an opportunity for you. So you just never know. And it's honestly, it's really about looking at your own energy and focus in terms of what is really empowering you. And one last thing I'll say about competition is I don't consider myself a competitive person, actually, like at all, except then I'll notice like certain scenarios where I will get competitive. Most often though, and this is a really, really helpful aspect actually for both of these things, comparison or competition, is that I will be more in competition or do more of the comparison game with myself. So this even came up the other day. I had this really awesome awareness about how if I ever hear my small voice, this happens to me too, that if I ever hear my small voice of like, kind of the who do I think I am, or nobody wants to listen to what I have to say, or whatever that small voice wants to, the ego really, the inner critic that wants to be so convincing. Ultimately, if I really wonder into that and I really listen to it, it's not only is it comparing myself now to who I have been, but it's comparing myself to who I foresee the potential of who I could become. And that is where there's comparison, right? That I might have an idea of what's possible for me because I have seen what's possible for some other people. So that's kind of what I'm comparing myself to. I'm basically, while it almost becomes less them and it becomes more that I'm comparing myself to something in my future. So same thing with competition. And this is actually where I do get excited about it. I get excited about competition through the lens of like my own self achievement, like really noticing where can I actually get better at this, and like personal mastery is a great way to say this. So I want to achieve like personal mastery, and this is where it can be helpful for any of you guys who are in masterminds or accountability groups or even have a coach. That's essentially what that is that you're bringing in someone to help you accomplish your personal goals or your professional goals. So my personal trainer, right? He is helping me accomplish my personal goals. So the only person I'm in competition with in those personal training sessions is me. Like, what was my own personal best, right? So this can actually be a very, very healthy competition, and it's awesome when you can get support from your fellow entrepreneurs or fellow people that are on the same thing. This is like why if you run a marathon, you might want to get on a team and do some running with some other people. So that was my 7 a.m. call this morning, is that I've got a great little 2-week kind of focused thing that I'm doing with this group of entrepreneurs that I know. And I've been in this community with them now for like 4 years. And it's so fun to ultimately, I have my own goals and everyone has their own individual goals, but we're able to support each other in accomplishing and achieving our individual goals. And so there is a competition, there is scoring in terms of really like looking at how much you're on it. But that it's not about like, I mean, there is. Some people can get really competitive in it in terms of like wanting to win. But for me, competition isn't about beating someone else. It's me showing myself that I can do it, you know? And I think that that can be a really healthy and very important piece, is to have it be healthy and have it stay healthy, which is all about your relationship with yourself, which is as you all know, one of my favorite things to talk about, because I think your relationship with yourself as you're going out there to achieve your goals in your business, in your life, if you're wanting to experience more ease and more flow and more joy, more abundant expansion, then it's so, so important that you are taking care of yourself and you're being in a kind and loving relationship with yourself. So that means that, you know, if something doesn't go well, you're not beating yourself up, you're not talking bad to yourself, and you're really supporting yourself. And this is where it's the power of, you know, commitment and then also recommitment. So you're consistently getting back on the horse, if you will, and saying, okay, you know, that didn't happen yesterday, but today we're going to go for it. And if you find that you're in this place of kind of a loop where the way that you've been doing it is no longer, you know, it's just not working, or you can't seem to change your behavior on your own, this is where it can be super, super supportive to have someone else that's outside of you. We will often work, you know, harder for someone else, or we'll work more to, you know, do that when we've got some of that accountability, like somebody's watching, right? And so then you can, and the very, very key part of that is support, you know, a safe space to have support. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing with my clients is really creating that safe space to just, if something doesn't happen and they're not actually fulfilling a commitment that they made or whatever, it's like that first of all, it's not invisible. It's not just to them where they can kind of like, you know, hide or sneak by and not have that accountability, but that more than anything, when they do miss it, we can talk about it. You know, we can just say like, wow, what went on there? And in this competition that I'm doing in the next 2 weeks, I'm really excited. I am excited to see what resistance comes up. And that's all it is. Any of these things, right? The comparison, the competition, that when we're feeling like that triggered or challenged or intimidated or all those things, it's our own resistance. So how much are you willing to be on that learning edge of your own resistance? How can you be in relationship with yourself in a loving, loving, compassionate, curious relationship with yourself when you're experiencing resistance, so that you can come back to getting yourself back in the flow and back to really that like winning feeling. I think that so often the scarcity and the feeling down and comparison can just come from us not actually focusing on what we want to create. So that's a lot of times I'm doing with my clients where I'm like, okay, refocus, because you comparing to someone else or wanting to do something that's not where you are is actually not going to help you get where you want to go. So, you know, refocusing and coming back into what is the outcome that you want, right? That's aligned for you, and knowing what those steps are to get where you want to go, and have that be, you know, this something that you're kind of constantly coming back to your own internal knowing, which we also talked about on the call 2 weeks ago, the abundance and scarcity call. All right, my loves, this is it. And I'm really, really excited for any comments that you want to share, any ways that comparison shows up for you in your life, anything that you've learned. I would love to hear how you approach or in relationship with competition, if you have found it beneficial for your business, as you have like embraced the competition. And there's a lot of times, so many times you can actually do partnerships. And this is the whole premise of like JV partnerships, which is joint venture partnerships, which is huge in the online world these days. And it's basically saying like, hey, let's rise together, right? Rising tide floats all boats. So yeah, would love to hear comments, would love to hear your hearts and see your hearts and likes, and share this with anyone that may be beneficial for. I have more tips and suggestions and great resources on willowlovesyou.com. And if I don't see you there, I look forward to seeing you here back next Friday. Lots of love. Or Thursday night, West Coast, Friday morning, Asia time. Have a great day or evening wherever you are.